This presenter currently has a paper that's in review for publication. It's an NTID fingerspelling test that this person is working with us on at the center. Dr. Leah Gear gave me her bio, and I was really surprised and excited to see. And I want to get it right, so I'm going to take a look at it. Dr. Gear's bachelor's degree is from New Mexico State University, and it's in kinesiology. And I hope that she explains why that was her original pursuit in college. She received her master's from Gallaudet University in linguistics, as well as her PhD in linguistics from the University of Texas at Austin. Currently, Dr. Gear is an associate professor at Cal State Sacramento. Dr. Gear is actually back to school in a graduate program. And this is what surprised me because she's currently a PhD student. Well, it's a certificate program. Technically, I thought it was a second PhD that she was pursuing. But I will turn the floor over happily to Dr. Gear.
Hello, everyone. And I'm sure you're wondering about how I had a bachelor's degree in kinesiology and then I switched over to linguistics. I went into college thinking that I was going to go into that program, and then I switched. While I was there, I was working at a camp for deaf and hard of hearing children. And as I was watching the kids, watching them signing, I noticed their actual production of sign language was not correct. And I was wondering what was going on with that. So maybe I should study something in connection with language development as I'm studying movement. So I decided to go into linguistics, and from then the rest is history. But I wanted to understand the connection between language skills, language acquisition, and mobility skill acquisition. So over time, I've given presentations that talk about how the body connects with phonological development and how predictive skills can happen. And one type of errors are in common between language and movement. So my bachelor's training came in handy, but I don't use it as much as I think. Anyway, yes, I have gone back to school. But that's what I'm not going to talk about today. But I did write an ASL curriculum for hearing parents who have deaf or hard of hearing children that focuses on from age 0 to 3. And again, long story short, because of that curriculum, the two of us have taught ASL classes to families who want to learn, who have deaf or hard of hearing babies. And doing that, I realized that early intervention work, I have no training in that. So now I'm back to school for a grad certificate. No, I'm not getting a second PhD. Heavens no. I have nightmares about that time of my life. So no, not a second PhD, but a graduate certificate for infant and toddler and their family through Gallaudet. So that's what I'm up to now. My history in a nutshell. Now, let's focus on imposterism. And what is that? And how does that affect us and affected me? From the time I met Peter in 2009 at that Starbucks, I was so intimidated, so scared to introduce myself. Now I have to say, I'm a little scared to introduce myself as well, but I've decided to be brave and conquer my fear. If you're the type of person that likes social media, I do have a website, I do have Twitter and Instagram on the slide. So if you're curious, you can tap into those and see what I'm up to. I do want to mention that RIT-NTID holds a very special place to my heart. I have gone back, or I want to give back in different ways. Back in 2015, I was in a program there. I think I had mentioned I had gone to the Starbucks during a conference.
Australia.
I'm sorry, I was in Australia. at a conference. We were there to support new deaf researchers. I also gave a presentation for I'm sorry, I missed that one, Carolyn.
Mm-hmm. I did too.
I'm so sorry. This is the interpreter. I missed the name of the conference, that second one that you mentioned. We presented at. The conference was theoretical
Issues in sign language research.
issues in sign language research. That was in 2016. Thank you. I do want to acknowledge the people that I have worked with in creating the content for today's presentation. I certainly could not have done this alone. This is a collaborative work with the group of people you see on the slide. You see their names and pictures on the slide. This group of people, well, the idea started, I'd like to say around 2018. I can't exactly remember how it literally started, but the group of us got together and started a discussion and started typing up our ideas, our experiences of what grad school was like in comparison to being either a faculty or a researcher, and what barriers do we face? What barriers are actually set in academia? And how is it different from being a student to a professor or postgraduate work? And what kind of supports do we have in those roles? So the content focused on how the system is a barrier. And that gives us that feeling of imposterism. By the end of our short time together, I hope you'll be able to divine what imposterism is. You'll be able to list a minimum of 4 ways that deaf academics have experienced imposterism, and identify ways to resist those feelings of imposterism. Ironically, right after we wrote this chapter and it was published, that was a several year long process. Right after we published it, I started seeing a discussion happen on Twitter about, I think we should back away from imposter syndrome, that term, and better use the term imposterism. The reason being is a syndrome has a very specific medical definition. And that's not the case with what we are discussing today. So in the book chapter, we do use imposter syndrome, that term, but there on out, we use imposterism to really define the feelings of feeling inadequate and not belonging and at doubt with ourselves. You will get the link to my slides after this presentation. If you click on the picture on this particular slide when you get it, that will lead you to an article that explains more about why imposter syndrome is not used anymore and imposterism is a better way to define how we are actually feeling. When we published the book chapter, one of the co-authors,
Marguerite de Munder.
and I'm sorry, I can't remember their sign name. They were one of the people that are involved with Academia, which is a vlog, a website where deaf academics can typically take their research articles, which are written, and narrow them down to a 10-minute blog. And that's where that's what I'm going to focus on today. Again, the picture itself is a link. So once you get these slides, you can click on the link and go there and look at all the different blogs. These are the 7 manifestations of imposter syndrome or imposterism for the deaf in academics. First has to do with access, needs and expectations for our work. For myself, when I transferred from being a PhD student to becoming a professor, I thought it's not going to be a large transition. As a PhD student, I taught almost all the time. I was there. in my PhD program, and I was there for 6 years. So I taught for 5 of those years. And I thought, there's no big deal. There's not going to be any difference once I transfer over to becoming a full-time faculty. It'll be the same responsibilities. As a whole, it'll be the same job. Oh, I was wrong. It's probably not a unique experience for a deaf person as for myself. In terms of a sense of belonging, there are increased issues that we had discussed in that chapter in the book. As a graduate student at university in the US or the UK or in Germany, typically there are systems in place for students. They have all different names, but there's some type of centralized location where a disabled student can go for any kind of supports they need or accommodations. As a faculty member or a researcher, those systems are probably not in place because everyone will talk about money. How much is it going to cost to have us around? And that causes feelings of, wow, is it worth it? And yes, you are worth it. I'm going to tell you right now, for the record, you are worth it. And yet it's hard when we are reduced to how much is it going to cost to support us? Another issue is that sense of, well, this wasn't exactly the case for me, but some of us in our group are the only ones that are responsible for a regular contract. Let's say if you're a teacher or researcher, we are responsible for contracting with interpreters, for the billing process, for the invoice process, and all of that. So how is that fair? How is that equitable? Everyone has their list of expectations, and yet those of us that are deaf have double duty because we also have to manage our access needs. And that creates a feeling of uncertainty. Do I have enough time to manage this? And then we're also typically doing so much already. Is this too much? And we basically could run out of time. I mean, the work is already hard, but now it's harder. And it's even harder to find a life-work balance when you're doing all of this. And then the focus, if it's always on money, that means it's a negative input. We become a negative factor. And what they expect from us to give, the expertise that we bring to the discussion, what our life experience is that we bring to the table, all of that is not focused on. The only focus is how much are they going to cost? And that's difficult to handle and then keep going. So that definitely is a challenge that's reoccurring. And we found that in our discussion in writing this book chapter. Second is deaf scholars as facilitator or novelty, something new and shiny for a department. On this slide, there's a snapshot of 2 articles. The first one being a journal article from the Disability Studies Quarterly. And the second is a blog based on an article called Cash Cows and Useless Eaters: The Appeal of Sign Language and the Inconvenience of Access. I encourage you to read both or watch the vlog. Basically, the articles describe the language is what the university wants. They find a benefit in having you by offering classes. They're trying to figure out who can teach them. They will bring in a deaf professor to teach language, ASL, and that's it. For example, Octavian Robinson this is his article, but he was also involved in the group of us who wrote the chapter in the book. He's a historian. He's not an ASL teacher. He can teach it, but his passion is history. But because he's deaf, does that mean he has to teach American Sign Language? Some of us want to, and that's absolutely fine. But many universities, they only see ASL as, again, a cash cow, because they can get undergraduate students to sign up for ASL classes. But if someone wants to teach any other type of class, either in exchange, or let's say if you're teaching two ASL classes, then you can teach one history class. That way, you know, that we can pay for the interpreter for that. That kind of thing happens. So it's hard to accept. I should say it can be hard. I shouldn't generalize, but it can be hard to accept our role when people are trying to force us into these boxes where perhaps not everyone fits. I do myself, I enjoy teaching American Sign Language, but with 8 of us, some of us do like to teach sign language and some of us do not. And my point is we shouldn't have to if we don't want to. The university has to recognize the other skills we have, whether it's teaching history or linguistics or engineering, no matter, teaching in our field of expertise. We are often reduced to, oh, you can teach the sign language class. It's popular, so you can teach that. Another challenge we discussed is on the topic of research. Oh, it's fun, people enjoy research, and it becomes a novelty. I'm just trying to figure out how, my thoughts are just spinning right now. I'm trying to put together a cohesive sentence. I explained before about the presentation with interpreters, with the interpreters. You know, I used to present without notes. For the longest time, I thought, I'm a great presenter. I don't need to use notes at all. I just don't need them. But I actually thought it's not true. There are many good lecturers out there that do use notes while they're presenting. Anyway, just to play it safe here, I'm using notes. So I'm going to look at my notes in my presentation. So pardon me for looking down. I'm back on track. The sentence deaf as other, something that's interesting or fascinating, exotic, but not as an authentic person. It's hard to find that deeper connection when we're looked at as a novelty. Attending conferences. I just got back from my very first large in-person conference, and it was extremely accessible. As I've been describing what our past was, we typically have to defend our worth, meaning, or we have to do things in exchange for, oh, okay, I'll teach an ASL class we will let you teach another class if you teach an ASL class. You know, so where you're teaching ASL more than your own field. And also when we attend conferences, there's sometimes a challenge. The conference organizers might not be prepared for a deaf presenter or a deaf attendee. The conference that I just went to was very knowledgeable. I've heard in the past that was not the truth for them. They were not accessible. For the plenary session, they had an ASL interpreter and a captionist, but they also had a cued speech interpreter or translator. And I'd never seen that at a conference before. I don't know if anybody was watching that person, but they were there for access. A challenge, though, with some conferences is that people, again, see us as a novelty. Instead of asking in-depth, thoughtful questions based on the talk, people will come up to us and say, hey, is sign language real? Is it really a language? Or I thought that all sign language was universal, or something so totally off the point, non-related to the presentation, instead of, what an amazing question. Thanks so much for asking me that. I would love to expand on that point from my presentation. But no, we typically get these surface questions. So sometimes we don't have the same benefit of that in-depth dialogue with people that our colleagues do. It should, conferences are about networking and getting new ideas. But if people don't ask authentic, in-depth questions, then we're at a loss. We don't get that valuable feedback from our audience members. Sometimes it's a challenge to network with people with interpreters. Let's say if I say to somebody, hey, I want to talk with you. Then here I go with my interpreter in tow. It can be intimidating. Here's a couple or two interpreters. Here we all are coming towards you. And maybe that's something that hearing people just need to unpack for themselves, perhaps. Maybe I shouldn't be so concerned about how they're feeling. And yet I do feel that there's an awkwardness there when I want to talk with someone, and yet it seems less personal because I have my entourage with me. Sometimes communication at conferences seem less articulate, or if we're just passing in the hallway on our way to another presentation, that being able to stop and give that brief chat. If the interpreter has walked away just for a minute, what do you do? Obviously, there are other ways to communicate with a hearing person. You can do speech to text on your phone. We have other ways to communicate, of course, but that just feels less organic, less spontaneous. Of that, hi, meet in a hallway, have a quick chat, and then go.
The next topic is the researcher positionality. Part of our job as researchers in most academic institutions and positions is to publish. Many times journal reviewers, typically themselves are not deaf people, but increasingly we do see more deaf reviewers on some of the review committees. But what we're finding, again, with the majority of reviewers who are not deaf individuals, is that they don't understand the value of sign language research or other topics that may be related to deaf people or the deaf community. So that means if as a researcher I've got 1,000-word max when I'm writing my proposal, as deaf academics we have to spend 1,000 or more of those words or half of those words just giving the foundational information about the worthiness of linguistics. I've read a number of papers related to sign language research that all begin with, back in the 1960s, William Stokey, right? And that whole discussion about his research in sign language and his publication of his dissertation and all of that foundational history. And because of that, therefore, ASL is worthy of research. Now, they say it much more eloquently than that, but still, there's all of that word count taken up just in setting up that foundational information instead of being able to get right to the heart and the value of the research. And that is not something that non-deaf academics have to do. So again, we're spending a lot of our word count setting up this historical information to convince the researchers of the worthiness of the topic when our non-deaf peers don't have to do that. So how is it then we, with just part of the word count left, that we can condense our information? So we are constantly defending our position. There's not a very welcome, open attitude of interest in it. Many times it's met with misunderstanding or questioning about how valuable is it, or what is that work like, or what is it about. It's the individuals that are not deaf who have a gap in their knowledge that we have to take the time to fill so that they can catch up to us and we can then begin to talk about and propose our research. And it leaves deaf academics with a sense of possibly not being good enough. There's an issue with reviewers where sometimes they will say, you really are biased as a deaf academic studying deaf community and sign language. We don't think that you can be neutral. It seems you've got some inherent bias. But they don't consider that there are many individuals who study their own native languages and their own cultures. And that's okay. There are different aspects of it to consider. There are different ways individuals can write and publish about their communities and their cultures. It's not a taboo thing to do within the research field. Yet sometimes with the deaf academics, there's a question of our ability to remain neutral or unbiased about our work. So again, that brings us to a constant defense of our positionality. Now, what I see becoming more popular is that non-deaf academics will have a portion of their article or a book chapter that does talk about the author, their biography, their credentials, what they bring to the article, their language background, maybe their native language, whether they're deaf or hearing individuals. If they are, did they grow up in a mainstream setting or at a residential school for deaf individuals, culturally deaf? So we are seeing it more and more within the non-deaf research field, but it still is more common within the deaf academic research realm. We are taking more time to set the foundational information of who we are and what we bring to the research. If the field were equitable, then every publication would have some kind of positionality statement as part of the writing. Simply, what are my life experience that I bring to the article? Everyone has bias. It's impossible to remove bias from our being. So if equitably we all had to state what it is we bring to the research, how we as a person impacts the research, instead of people making assumptions about someone because they're deaf or because they're too close to that or they're a member of that community, or if it's a person that has a preferred language modality. What we see today is the number of people who are willing to share that information about themselves is unbalanced between the deaf and the non-deaf communities. There's still a sense of not trusting deaf individuals to not be neutral within the research. But then we have to consider, isn't it more valid when the research is done by a person who has that same lived experience? Doesn't that bring a certain validity to it? But because the majority non-deaf culture still has gatekeepers of people who are not deaf, we are left with defending our positionality. Thankfully, we see more deaf individuals in academia, more of them on review committees, more of them in positions of power, that we are seeing some of that becoming balanced again, less of that being on defense. So when I think about positionality, it's not that people don't have to talk about who they are or what they bring. I believe that still does have a relevance and adds a richness to our writing. The problem is when reviewers aren't open-minded to it, or when there's not a standard expectation of even a brief statement of positionality, then it's not equitable to deaf academics. Because of this, deaf academics are always on the defense, always having to, again, justify what we bring to the field. I had a recent experience with this very topic. The slide shows a picture, and this is an article that will be published very soon. It will have an entire series of a number of writings and publications, all long-form papers on a particular topic, which is really very nice to be able to have the space to really expound upon a topic and dig deep into the research. The co-author and myself had bio and positionality statements as the introduction to the paper. And the reviewer had no problem with the paper and the topic. But the question to myself and my co-author was, why are you on the defense? Because our original title was The Case for Family-Centered Sign Language Curriculum. It was one editor in particular who was a deaf person who asked us that question. Why are you defensive? Why do you feel like you have to make the case and argue for this? And it was a good question because neither one of us had ever thought that there was any other stance but to be defensive and to convince individuals of the value of the topic. And it was this deaf reviewer who suggested to us that you are going in ready to fight, and you may want to switch your approach, right? And so we changed the title because of that feedback to what you see here, a family-centered sign language curriculum to support deaf children's language acquisition. There's no negativity, there's no bias, there's nothing that has any sort of affect to it. But that's difficult because I've got a lifetime as a deaf researcher, a lifetime of that defensiveness, of that need to justify our position, and it's difficult to unlearn that. Topic number 5 is modality chauvinism. One of the challenges for many sign language researchers, for many deaf researchers who are studying something other than sign language, one of the challenges is that people think sign language is cute, but it's only cute when it's for hearing babies, right? When they want to be able to communicate with their prelingual babies, teaching them baby sign, which I have some feelings about that term baby sign, but that's for another conversation. Or it's valuable when it's for undergraduate students who need language credits in foreign language, or for individuals who may need some assistance. They may need some help because they just need some help. But when deaf academics use sign language as their dominant language and their preferred modality to present information, to share their ideas, to engage in conversation with other academics, that's when the perception changes. That's what I mentioned before about the feeling of otherness or being othered by the perception of sign language. Not being a part or not having a sense of belonging to the rest of the community around us in academia. That can lead to the notion of spoken language being superior to a sign language modality. Dr. Hauser has a talk about this that I regularly frequent and regularly, it's a TED talk from some time ago about autism and linguisticism and the oppression of a hearing-based society. So when people envision that spoken language is the superior mode of modality, and an individual comes to present using sign language for whatever reason, there's a sense that they don't belong. It could be more difficult for them to engage. There's a bit of a pejorative view. And it's difficult when you're faced with that to feel like you can overcome that, to feel like you bring value, simply because of the bias against the modality that I prefer to use. Deaf people are often overlooked as experts in our field, simply because of the language modality we use. I'm sure you're familiar with the cartoon on this slide. It's one of my favorite cartoonists. I think it helps. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe in some systemic way it can open people's eyes. But again, for hearing people or for non-deaf people to recognize sign language and understand that it's different from English, but they recognize that in a very superficial way. They don't recognize the complex richness of the language. And so because it's recognized as valuable only in a simplistic way, it's easily offered to babies to have some baby sign language, But deaf children are deprived of a critical language learning time. So for deaf researchers to be faced with the choice of having to force themselves to communicate in a way that aligns with the majority preference as opposed to their own preferred modality is difficult. Okay, I think I only have 15 minutes left, so time is flying. I'm going to have to fly through the rest of these slides. Number 6 is working with interpreters. Sometimes what contributes most to the feeling of imposterism is who is speaking for us. What is the voice that the non-deaf members hear? What does that voice sound like? Here on this slide, you'll see the minimum educational requirements for an interpreter for NIC certification. It's a bachelor's degree. And then they take the certification exam called the NIC. But the minimum education for a tenure-track position for any individual in an academic institution is a terminal degree in any of the ones you see listed on the slide. So we have a number of years of greater education, and I'm not saying that interpreters who have a bachelor degree could never be adequate to work with deaf researchers in academia. I know many interpreters who have a baccalaureate degree and are very skilled at what they do. The problem is many of them are not able to interpret at the level of register or language that I use commonly in academia. So it can be difficult to find an interpreter who has the ability to speak in a way and represent my information and my language in a way that's standard within the research field and academia. And that itself is another topic for another day. But think about that really. What do we do, right? For interpreters who are working at universities, maybe there's a different minimum standard to be an interpreter in academia, but it's still very frustrating. It's still a barrier for deaf academics when you're in a situation where the interpreter simply doesn't have the ability to match the register and word choice that I would utilize myself. Another challenge when it comes to working with interpreters is that deaf people are very obvious when interpreters are present. We travel in a small entourage. I mentioned before wanting to go talk to a fellow researcher and having 2 interpreters in tow behind me, and it can be intimidating and awkward. We can't simply sneak out of a meeting and leave early like many of my non-deaf peers can do to attend another meeting or teach. It's very obvious when a deaf person leaves the room because the interpreter entourage leaves with them. But my non-deaf peers leave meetings all the time, like I said, to teach or to go to another meeting. It's a very normal part of our jobs and our daily schedule. But non-deaf peers are less visible when they do it. You know, it's clearly understood that they've got other needs that they have to attend to, other duties. But when a deaf person does it, because we're not just one person leaving the room quietly, it's more of a production. Many times we need to schedule around the availability of the interpreters. For me lately, I've had to rework a number of meetings. I had meetings last semester from 8 to 10 p.m. in the evening because there was no other time that we could get an interpreter during the day. That's when there's a high demand. They weren't available. It's difficult to serve on committees when everyone else, it's part of our scholarship and requirements, but when we can't get an interpreter during regular work business days, then it makes it very difficult to have everyone else accommodate an 8 p.m. meeting. If I leave the committee, right? I can't join the committee at a normal time. And so do I leave the committee or do I force an accommodation? It's a difficult situation to face no matter which way it goes. The availability or inavailability of interpreters creates barriers for deaf individuals within the deaf academia. If an interpreter is late, if they're stuck in traffic, we are alone in a room of non-deaf peers who are engaging in conversation and small talk, and we're invisible because of it. There's an invisible wall between us and other academics and researchers. There's a wall between our coworkers and our peers. The most important point of today, of my talk, is how can we resist all of these ways that this manifests, this imposterism? How can we resist it? How can we level the playing field and create some equity and balance for ourselves? Because we have ways to resist it. We have deaf networks, meetings, organizations, writing groups. We have other ways to support the deaf ecosystem. We have ways to have those brainstorming conversations so that together we can determine ways to address the inequities of the world of academia that we face. Just a couple weeks ago, I participated in a 14-day writing challenge, and it was from the National Center for Faculty Development and Diversity. My university recently purchased a subscription to that for all of the university professors. If your university doesn't have that, I would encourage and maybe petition for them to have a subscription for your membership or for all of the faculty. I really enjoyed this challenge. I'm in my 7th year of being a faculty, and I'm really not good at creating time for myself to write. It's not my best skill set. I'm a very dedicated worker, but I don't always make time for writing. So this challenge from the NCFDD, again, it's 2 weeks. It happens every semester as well as in the summer. And so really, if I participate each of the 3 times, I'm getting 6 weeks of dedicated writing. That's a way for me, fall, spring, and summer, to have that dedicated time. That's already more writing than I would do without these challenges. And if I participate in the challenge, I have the opportunity to connect and engage with other deaf academics at other universities, even if it's for a short 5-minute Zoom call, or giving someone feedback about what their thought process is. Another set of eyes to look at something, another bit of review, checking in with one another to make sure, are you on track? Do you need some support, right? Is there some kind of technology, right? There's no real standard system to support and foster that type of work with deaf academics, and this is one opportunity. I want to be very open. I'm interested in what your ideas are, ways that we can resist the feelings of imposterism, and that you can excel as a scholar. So if you'd like to email me, if you'd like to share your ideas, I know we have just a few minutes left for the Q&A, but I'm very open to your thoughts and ideas. It's important for us to keep the conversation going because no one can solve this issue overnight. Every institution is different and unique. Every environment is different in academia. Depends on how many deaf people may be your coworkers. I'm not alone in my department. I have other faculty who are deaf with whom I work, but there are some deaf academics and researchers who are alone in their university. Oh, I forgot we had 90 minutes. Oh, this is wonderful. Okay. Oh, let's see. I wish I could tell my story, but now I don't remember what story I wanted to tell you. Well, now we have plenty of time for Q&A. So, with that in mind, what are your ideas and thoughts? You can put them in the chat. I can give you a minute to think about it. What technologies or groups or organizations have you used? What methods or ways have you resisted the feeling of imposterism? How is it you fight that? What are your ways of resistance? I'll give you a few minutes to put some thoughts and ideas into the chat.
I thought I'd come in and sign this question. So, ways to resist that feeling of imposterism. It really requires that internal peace. I have to be at peace with myself with the feeling of I can. We don't have that army behind us to support us on our journey. Many of us who deaf PhDs, I've done it ourselves. We're an army of one. So really having to find that inner peace. I mean, of course, it helps if you go to conferences like the Deaf Academia Conference, where, we have everybody that is like-minded, the we can all talk to. And then you get that feeling of not being alone. And I think that helps. That's just an idea I have. Oh, thanks so much, Peter, for sharing that. Okay. Let me backtrack for just a minute to the slide about interpreting. And I'll share my story. I'm going to talk about voice mediation. When a coworker hears a different person speaking your words. I grew up hard of hearing, the progressive hearing loss. At Gallaudet, you wouldn't notice that because I saw it. I got to the University of Texas and I was in a class and there was no interpreter. I thought, why am I missing everything? Okay, that's a separate story. My point here is, for a while, I felt because I can speak, I had to. And that if another person heard me speak once, then from there on out, I would always have to speak with them. I couldn't switch to ASL. Remember a while ago, we had, I don't even know what to call it. There was a group of us that were living in Austin. Some were pre-PhD, some were post. And we got into a discussion about our experiences. I happened to mention, I don't really want to speak my lectures because I don't want people to come up and talk to me and think I don't need an interpreter. And that will just cause more chaos and confusion. I prefer to use the interpreter. So I then decided I would sign my lectures, my presentations from there on out. Someone who does not speak said, but you can control what you say. Why would you want to depend on an interpreter for that? And that's a really good question. It's worth consideration. Sometimes it is hard. If I'm working with an interpreter that I don't know, sometimes it's hard to just let go of the interpreter and hope for the best. But I do think it's kind of like Peter said, you have to find that inner peace. And I feel comfortable with my decision. I know sometimes perhaps I have to back up and do some clarification or fingerspell something again or expand on a concept or work around the topic to be able to get to a point where everybody's on track. But I think that's also empowering for me within my journey because it shows the other people and other non-deaf people that interpreters are not mind readers, and it's not an easy task. Even if they're the best interpreters, they struggle sometimes. The day of my dissertation defense, my absolute favorite interpreter was sick. She still interpreted, but perhaps it wasn't her best work. And that's something that deaf people really have to think about all the time. How am I sounding to everybody? What do I sound like to them? If communication goes awry, does that mean I wasn't clear? Does it mean the interpreter misunderstood? So there are all these layers. And I still sometimes feel, is it me or them? No, it was them. No, it was me. My point being, you have to find that peace in whatever communication mode you decide on and work it, just work it. I know deaf people who take time in their presentation to say, I'm speaking to you right now. Don't come up to me without an interpreter. Or be ready to communicate with me in a different way. I can speak, yes, but I can't lip read. And I applaud those people for saying that. I mean, I'm not in a position where I'm ready to say that yet, but I think that I can certainly relate to that inner peace that person has found. I'm going to present in English, but then don't expect me to understand you later. This doesn't set the expectation of our communication. but it's equitable. Because I'm working by speaking, you have to find another way to communicate that's accessible to me. I know I went off the point a bit with my story, but I see Peter going, oh my God. I think that was in response to my dissertation defense day, the interpreter being ill. Yeah, I was so nervous. I was never nervous with this interpreter, never. She told me, or they told me, I was like reading a book. They would just open it up and speak. It was smooth as butter. But that day, I think it was much harder. It did work out fine. Obviously, I'm here today. I am what I am. Now I want to look at Jessica's question again. Oh, tools. You're talking about tools to resist that feeling of imposterism. Allies. My first year here was really difficult. Excuse me, for a number of reasons. Some related to my being deaf, other reasons not. Sometimes we can't even separate. Is it an issue because I can't hear or the communication is messing up? But there are a few of you I know who know of Dr. John Henner. He works in the University of North Carolina, Greensboro. I remember I texted him saying, oh, help me, John, help me. The two of us Skyped at that time because, you know, it was back in the day. That's how you quote unquote called each other. So we got on a Skype call and I don't know, I can't remember what I was upset about. And I don't remember what he told me, but I do know that he was also first year faculty and was experiencing the same kind of frustrations I was. So I could rely on him to help me in some way. I knew. And he did. Maybe it was simply just talking, him being there for me. So you have to find your people who you trust, people who you can just text and say, please, I need to chat with you ASAP. Those who will be there for you and who will give you that confidence boost. Because often it's the case where we absolutely can do the thing we need to do, but it's, my husband calls it brain weasels. He calls them brain weasels. I don't know. It's his word. I don't know if that's a common phrase or not, but those are those, you know, the little devil in your brain that sends you down the path that says you're not good enough, you don't belong, you're an imposter, all those negative thoughts. So you have to find a person that can talk you out of that spiraling thought processes. For myself, John did that for me that day. And I don't know if he remembers that specific conversation, but I sure do. And it helps me a lot. So find a person you can talk to and a person who can get rid of your brain weasels. That's one tool I use. Another is to finding allies who are not deaf. Find people that you work with who know the system well. For me, I made friends with one of my academic senators. This person knew the policy like no one else. An expert. Somehow it seems like she just memorized every single policy. Collective bargaining agreement. She can just spout it. Oh, that's section number blah, 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 and number so-and-so. And I'm astounded. How do they know that? But she has it in her head. So if I have any problems, let's say in regards to access in some way, I can go to this person and say, who can I talk to help change this? Identify the barriers, be it barriers in, let's say, the maximum payment for interpreters. I don't know, just an example. Who's the person or who's the entity that needs to change that? And this person, this senator knows, and that's who helps me to identify. So I know, identify and make friends with people like that. Another tool, something I think about quite often. I don't know if I'm the best at following my own advice, but I think about it often enough. Some of you may also know Dr. Adam Stone, an alumni of RIT. I remember a long time ago at a conference, we got together and there was a collaboration. Collaborative, right? His word was strategically. Don't collaborate just for the sake of collaboration. Collaborate because you have reasons behind why you need to collaborate with someone. I made that mistake early on. I thought, oh, I want to work with this person and collaborate with them. And then we fizzled out. I mean, nothing came of it. There was nothing to show for that collaboration. So, what do I put in my 10-year file now because of that? So collaborate strategically. Doesn't matter if they're deaf or hearing. There's a new paper I'm working on with 2 hearing people. I don't know either of them well. One is in my particular college. She is a mother of an autistic child. And the other is the director of the Community Engagement Center. And we're working on an article in regards to supporting parents with children with disabilities or disabled children. We're going to be talking about the different resources that you develop or that parents can use for kids with autism. I'm going to talk about writing the curriculum for using ASL at home and how to support parents in that. That's a strategic plan that I'm encountering. There's a reason behind it, not just, hey, you want to write together? This will work for me. No, you really have to have reasons behind your collaborative moments. Because you have to protect your time. And again, 7 years in as a faculty member, and I am still working at protecting my time. I'm not perfect, but I'm working on it. I am finding a balance in what I'm doing. I hope that answered your question, Jess. I guess to summarize my journey so far, I graduated in 2016 with my PhD. I got my tenure track position. I got the offer in May of 2016. I started in August the same year. I know that tenure and promotion processes is so different depending on where you are. Here it's teaching, we're a teaching focused institute, so the procedure is extremely different from an R1 or an R2 university. But here, I decided to go for early tenure and promotion in 2019. It was approved in spring of 2022. In the fall, I will have my first sabbatical. I'm quite thrilled about that. You can't imagine, not teaching for an entire semester, but it's like, oh, I could go to meetings. Oh my, I just can't imagine it right now. But I will be focusing on a new book, a next level book in the ASL at home curriculum series, the next book. While I think I have improved in some areas, I am doing okay, and I hope you're doing okay as well. What's next? We just will have to wait and see. For me, there are many things that I had to figure out for myself. But I was also dependent on others for many things. some people that are deaf and some people that are not. There's literally no right or wrong. And there's no guidebook that individuals can use for everybody's academic journey. There just isn't. It's a guessing game. It can be a strategic guessing game, but still it's a trial and error until you find it. Sometimes there are peaks and valleys. Sometimes you will be utterly frustrated. Sometimes I thought, should I start looking for another job? I don't really think about leaving, but sometimes you get so frustrated, or I do. It's, where can I find the greener grass? It's got to be out there somewhere. I want to find that place that's easier. It won't happen, but maybe a different challenge, and there's always a different challenge everywhere. But how we accept our own journeys will really determine how we feel about where we're at and where we land. And there's always something to celebrate, always. So I say to you, you are doing great. You are where you should be. You'll get to where you need to be in time. That's all I have, folks. I am open for any questions you have or want to share. I can help a bit. I can moderate the questions if needs be. Peter is saying, I have a couple of questions as well. Thank you so much for your presentation. Amazing, uplifting, and really a perfect fit for NTID. We need to hear this now. The grass is not particularly greener here because we're buried under snow right now. Well, and that's a challenge too that we don't have here. Got to tell you. Okay, so any questions for Dr. Gear? If there's no, I have a couple of questions for you. I made notes. I'm very proud of being a note person now, Peter.
So honestly, we had 28 people here, and I feel like you should be university-wide to the entire campus, seriously, because it was a beautiful presentation.
Thank you. It means a lot coming from you.
You talked about some of the system problems, right, with your hearing non-deaf peers and colleagues, right? The ways that you have to navigate academia and the barriers that you face. Here at NTID, I don't know what percentage might be non-deaf or deaf, but we have a number, maybe 10 or 20 years, we've had a number of staff here who've worked with hearing faculty for decades, and they've figured out ways to do it. But what we're seeing now, more and more, are deaf PhDs arriving, and they aren't acting in the same way that those longtime non-deaf faculty have. They're busy. They don't have time to collaborate. Like you mentioned, the deaf tax, right? And having to do double duty. So there are systemic problems that aren't aligned with the ways that we need to work. And the folks who've been here for decades say, well, what do you mean? It's fine. I've worked it out. There aren't those problems here. What are you talking about as a new faculty member?
I think that's kind of something that we have talked about in my deaf studies program at my university. There are still situations where we want to call a last minute meeting, but there's the interpreter problem. Or we want to have an event on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and it's good luck getting an interpreter that day because those days are booked. It's impossible to get interpreters. We haven't tried this, but one thing that we're tempted to do is just to allow it to fall apart. Let the communication just absolutely fall apart and see what happens. Not intentionally, but a few months ago, we had an interpreter from another agency, hadn't worked with us before, and myself and another deaf faculty member were in the meeting. we couldn't remain because the interpreter was missing so much, wasn't able to understand. They were constantly asking for what people said. So when it came to my turn to give my report, the interpreter just, again, so many errors. But it was so bad that hearing people noticed it and were shocked. And we're thinking, well, this isn't normal. What is going on? Now, since that time, the hearing people have recognized, oh, this is a systematic problem, that the communication so fell apart, even the captionist that was, in front. And there are lots of higher administrative people there trying to read what I wrote. I said, please just email me later. There's no point in me being here because of what's going on. I did stay for the rest of the meeting, but my coworker left. So, we have thought about a strategy, maybe stage a communication breakdown. I'm not sure if that would be effective or not. But based on that particular meeting from a while ago, it might help. There are a few people who are still like, what's the big deal? I thought it was fine. We can get a last minute interpreter, no big deal. It shouldn't be that big of a problem. I've also thought about giving a presentation and somehow get people to show up. I'm not quite sure how to do that, but then explain some of these things. What I've talked about today, just explain. If you don't see this issue, it's because you're a hearing person and you're not a deaf person. But just be able to flatly say, this is what's going on. Finding the right time and place, I'm still talking that over of how to do that in a way to maximize the impact. I don't have a perfect answer, but one thing that I do think is to create a disruption that will impact hearing people so that they will finally say, oh, maybe our system is not as efficient as we thought it was. Oh, I'm sure there are folks that have gone to meetings where, somebody's at the mic and then somebody says, oh no, wait, hold, the mic isn't working. What do we do? There's technical problems. But if there's no interpreter, they just go ahead. Or if the lights go off, oh, that's no problem. That hearing people say they can just listen to the presentation. But perhaps if we impact how the hearing people receive the information, they might change their tune. So maybe some disruption in some kind of way. Make good trouble, quote unquote.
Yes, I completely understand that. Wonderful way to explain that. Let me see if there are any other questions in the chat.
I think there is one in the chat. Let's take a look at that.
I'll give you a second to read it. It's in the chat.
Yep, a hearing person saying that all hearing people at RIT should watch this presentation to help them understand the barriers that are in place, the frustrations that deaf people experience on their journey. Maybe consider professors in the future. Who are seeking tenure. I'm on a committee for tenure review. Something that we've discussed is taxation and what that looks like for different people within the system. So I am paired with another person, a mother of an autistic child that I mentioned before. This woman happens to be Black. And she is recruited into every diversity-related, Black-related group on campus. And she's saying, I'm a second-year faculty. Give me a break. So yes, it's hard on one hand that we want to see the system change. And sometimes we have to do the work for that change. And yet at the same time, that tax is so hard. And it also makes it really hard to balance your life and balance all of our responsibilities and get the access we need and deserve. Thanks, Sarah, for that. Do we have time for any more questions?
We've got about 9 minutes or so left.
Oh, great. If there's any more.
So with regard to interpreters, obviously it's an important topic. It's an important aspect of our deaf academic life. We have to navigate working with interpreters at conferences or working with deans who are not deaf or any level of academia. Even here at RIT, we face that same issue. NTID is one of 9 colleges that comprise RIT. And so here we have a good number of interpreters. In 1 week, RIT provides more interpreting services than the state of Connecticut does in an entire month. So there are many places where they don't have enough interpreters. We expect our hearing faculty and staff here at NTID to learn sign language. But there are some individuals who don't have the capacity for fluency. Some people who are not deaf and have been here for a number of years still see normal ASL facial grammatical features as a deaf person being emotional and exaggerating and being dramatic. And there are some people who have the capacity to change, but others don't. So my question for you is, I've shared with everyone that when I saw you today, I didn't realize you'd become an associate professor. And I didn't mean to make you feel like I was shocked as if you didn't deserve it, but I was so surprised because you'd attained it so early in your career. So congratulations on that promotion.
Thank you.
And I thought, oh my God, how old does that make me if you're an associate professor? But during that process, I'm sure you've had to fight some battles and advocate for that. So how do you show your work is equivalent to your non-deaf peers? You know where I'm going with this, right?
No, keep going. Go ahead. But I do have something to say about that. Go ahead, though.
Well, again, it's about facing the challenges, navigating the advocacy, your tenure, promotion materials.
First, I was so on the defense. Oh no, I'm talking about when I was defending my. I'm sorry, you're speaking of interpreters. I totally messed up. Could you start that again, please? I don't know what the tenure committee looks like here at RIT NTID, but it wasn't until I actually got tenure that I could serve on a tenure committee, be a reviewer for people going for tenure. My file, in looking back, was very defensive. I defended my work, saying I deserve this and gave the reasons why. After I got tenure, I started to serve on review committees and looking at other people's files and how they just simply described their work. I so wished I hadn't been so defensive. I so wished I had been, I would have changed. I didn't have to defend my article. I was published. The article speaks for itself. I think it does, at least. I don't want to sound arrogant, but I had a good file. I was very proud of it. So I wish that my frame at that time of myself was less defensive, thinking I had to prove myself. I wish I had been more, thank you all on the tenure track committee for your work, and I just like to explain what I've done. But I didn't see that until after the fact. So next year in the fall of 24, I'm going up for full professor. So knowing this now, I don't have to get my guns ready for a fight. The work is there. I either get the promotion or I don't. But I know what my file says. So don't assume that you always have to defend yourself, but present your work. Explain your work. But also don't shy away from describing the tax, the taxation that it takes. Maybe you mentor a lot, or if you spend a lot of time on training interpreters, well, not training interpreters, but sometimes that we do have interpreter students here who come from the community college to work, to practice and sit down. We sit down and talk with them, ask them if they want to work at a university. We explain what that looks like and so forth. That takes time. We're trying to train the next generation of interpreters and explain why that's important. It's not for me, but it's for those in the community, in academia. It's not my issue, it's everyone's issue. It's a collective issue. Oh, I'm just looking at the time here.
Yes, we really should wrap up. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, I'm just looking at encouraging RIT faculty and staff members to sign up for FSSL classes. Yes, I agree.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for everything you've shared with us today. We really appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. It really means a lot being invited here at RIT NTID.
We will be inviting you back at some future date. You can count on that.
I look forward to it.
Take care and keep in touch.
I will. You do the same. Thank you, everybody.